Hello, aspiring Murdlers! Today, I'm going to do a deep dive into my strategies for clue deduction. This is just one piece of the puzzle, literally, so be sure to check out my quick start guide and other training videos for more info on how to get a successful solve every day. Clue deduction is all about gathering the right information to place it in our detective's notebook. We need to find the what, as in what information do we have, and the where, as in where do we place that information, in order to leverage our clues and evidence and solve our Murdle. Sometimes identifying our what and where will require no effort, as the clue will tell us outright where to put that information and what that information is. Sometimes the clue will require us to deduce one or more of those pieces. That is what we will focus on in today's deep dive. The clues we will need to deduce correspond to our clue cards for suspects, weapons, and locations. Even though we do have motives in our Tuesday and Saturday puzzles, I don't think I've ever seen one that needed deduction from our motive cards, so we'll just focus on the first three for now. Let's start, as always, with our suspects. Suspect clues that we'll need deducing will pertain to the following. It could be the suspect's hair color, eye color, handedness, as in right or left, height, almost always in relation to others, so the tallest suspect or the second shortest suspect, and their star sign or birthday. Star sign clues will be things like the person in the enormous bathroom was a Leo. Birthday clues will tell you things like the person who was in the enormous bathroom was born on August 9th. As you'll see here, we don't have anyone's actual birthday in the clue cards, just their star sign. So with this type of clue, you'll need to take an extra step to identify the star sign associated with August 9th, which is Leo. Don't worry if you don't follow astrology, I don't either. The puzzle will provide a link that provides all the dates and signs for you. When working with weapon clues, there are a few things that you may need to deduce. These could be things from the description or the body text, and for these clues, you'll often be able to map to something in your clue to something in the description given for that weapon. Sometimes this gets a bit trickier. For example, often we'll see a bottle of Cabernet toilet wine in the Sunday puzzles, and that is often identified by a red drop. That said, when you look at the description, there's no mention of a red drop, although it does confirm that it's red wine, so it does require that bit of a leap there. But that said, clues like these are more of an anomaly, and more often than not, you will see that immediate one-to-one relationship between the clue and the weapon description, so don't worry. You can also use the weight of the weapon, so if it was heavy, medium, or lightweight, and its composition. My personal favorite is karate hands made of hands, but often it will be materials like wood, glass, etc. A quick note on the composition. Recently, I was wondering if there was any difference between made at least in part of versus made of, to see if the latter implied that the weapon was made only of that one material, for example, wood, versus wood and metal. As far as I can tell, there isn't a difference between the two clue intros. That said, I will keep an eye on this in future puzzles to see if a different pattern starts to emerge. One important thing to note, sometimes you'll see things about the weapons in your clues and evidence or even in the title that may seem a bit wacky. For example, something like the poison cup of tea was right-handed only. Your first thought may be, hold up, how can a cup of tea have a handedness? But just go with it. Your second thought may tempt you to look for this info in the weapon card. In this case, you will not find anything there. Your task for a clue like this is actually to identify the right-handed suspects, just as we discussed earlier, as they will be the only ones who can use that weapon. In the Murdle universe, there is no such thing as a right-handed person getting the left-handed scissors from the leftorium and struggling to use them to commit a murder. That is just a clear sign that those two cannot go together. Similarly, sometimes the weights seem a little bit off. For example, recently I saw a cup of poison tea as heavyweight, and there's something else that seemed like it'd be much, much heavier that was labeled as medium or lightweight. And so that kind of threw me off, but again, in these cases, you just gotta go with it. Whatever it says, that is gospel. Let's finish out our card type clues with the information that you may need to deduce about locations. To identify a location referenced in your clue, you will often rely on one of these two things. One, whether the location was indoors or outdoors, and two, the description, once again going back to that body text. With these, I would again caution you not to extrapolate or apply outside knowledge. The location clues are usually very specific and map closely, if not exactly, to the descriptions given. For all of these card type clues, your next step will be to look through the cards provided on your suspects, weapons, and locations, and identify the one referenced in the clue based on the information you have deduced. Often, you'll find that several cards may meet your criteria. Several suspects might be left-handed, several weapons may be made of wood, and several locations may be outdoors. Let's review what to do in these cases by going back to the example, a Leo was in the enormous bathroom. If you had two Leos within your suspect list, I would often do something like marking an X for the non-Leos and using the question marks to signal that one of the two Leos must have been in the enormous bathroom. Sometimes you'll have tricky things like 4 out of 5 locations being outdoors, and the clue will say something like the antique flintlock was found outdoors. In those cases, I don't typically bother with question marks. Instead, I will cross off the one indoor location to show that we know the antique flintlock could not have been there. If you're interested in learning more about grid logic and strategies, you should check out my deep dive on it next. Before we wrap up, I wanted to mention one other clue type that often trips people up and that can pertain to any of the information we discussed above. These clues will often say things like, Officer Copper was suspicious of, childhood friends with, in love with, the person who had this item was in this location or had this motive, etc., etc. These clues are actually deceptively simple. All they do is separate the named suspect from whatever murder weapon, location, or motive was mentioned. So, to say this differently, Officer Copper was childhood friends with the person who brought the crazed squirrel becomes Officer Copper did not bring the crazed squirrel. There will be nothing for you to find in any of the cards about childhood friendships or anything else, and these clues can entice folks to try to extrapolate and look for other hints or connections, but don't fall into that trap. These are essentially red herrings. I hope this was a helpful deep dive into how you can apply your deduction skills to identify the suspects, weapons, and locations referenced in your clues and evidence to solve the daily Murdle. As you continue to refine your deduction skills, be sure to check out the other videos in my tutorials playlist, try the mini Murdle, and of course you can catch me here with daily solves if you ever get stuck. Thanks so much for watching!